The Q2 2020 financial results are adding another layer of fear and uncertainty to the hospitality and business events industries. Will we be seeing another layer of retrenchment over the next few months? And if so, will women be in a more disadvantaged position throughout this crisis? How can women support women throughout this process? In this episode of BEA Conversations, we are speaking with Kerry Healy on the topic of transferable skillsets. Kerry, thank you so much for joining us today. It is still a very emotional period that people are going through with the fear of retrenchment. How do we even start and where do we even start in terms of moving forward?
I think first up, you have to allow yourself to grieve. You are right. I mean, the first quarter results for hospitality and tourism at large are horrendous at best and incredibly saddening for all of us. I think that one of the major commonalities we all have is that we love this industry. People come into it for a reason. And so yes, it's a very confronting time for people. So I think it's important that if you are retrenched or you have a feeling that that's what's going to happen or it's potentially on the cards for you, then you have to allow yourself to go through all the normal stages of grief. You know, you're going to feel scared and you're going to feel sad. You might feel angry, before you can get to a point that you feel ready to start to engage with your network and to really dig deep and think about, well, what are my transferable skills? Because the good news is we do all have them. And to your point, you know, when I worked in recruitment, which I did for a sort of a 8-year period, ironically, it was often people trying to get into hospitality from retail or FMCG into operational roles and leadership roles. And you know, I would have the pleasure of having conversations with these people, a bit like you and I are now. And it was funny because I would always be looking at what they had done and I would be trying to draw boxes next to what are the core competencies I knew that we needed in our industry. So I think it's important to really think in competencies. You're going to need to work out what can you bring with you, whether it's your leadership skills and within that your emotional intelligence, your critical thinking, your time management. These are universal skills, and I was reading a Forbes article and it lists about 7 of these. So I do some reading on what are transferable skills. There's going to be technical, there's clearly communication, there's how you lead. And there may be some more along the way when you really think about what was your role in terms of broad boxes, not in the minor details of what was in a job description. And I think you are going to need to go through your experiences and be able to talk about yourself through stories and through examples. So we can't just say that we're great leaders. We really need to give examples, and you will have also been exposed to training. You know, when we talk about the fact that we were maybe involved in project management or critical thinking, then what are those examples? And I think this is also where your networks come in. And I'm not just talking about our immediate friends in hotels or venues or agencies. I think you've got to step back once you've maybe looked at what are the core competencies that you feel are transferable. Then this is the time to reach out through your network. Is it a banking client? Is it an FMCG client? Is it a retail client? And talk to them about the buzzwords in their industry, the language in their industry, and what they look for in their account management roles, in their leadership roles, depending on where you are, what your focus is. Because when you have the opportunity to present yourself, you'll be able to reference, I understand this and this is important in your business. It's a little bit like that in hospitality, and you try and draw parallels between the two worlds. And I think we surprise ourselves when we step back and have a look. I had a personal friend who spent years private flying. And so of course, you know, when you leave flying, there's not a parallel industry. And he was for ages applying for roles without really going through that task and looking at what he was really competent at and what those skills were. And you know, he ended up working for an organisation that runs all the concierge and the private banqueting within the corporate firms and is doing incredibly well there. Now runs a team of 16 people. I think depending on which country you're in and working in, there are different industries available to you. So someone in sales could go into sales within retail, could go into sales within leasing, depending on the laws of that country. So there are opportunities.
So in the world where job opportunities are constrained, do you feel that women will need more support in terms of identifying transferable skill sets, and how can women help each other?
Well, I mean, I might say this right now. I mean, if there's someone that wants to talk to me, I will always help someone, you know, and I think especially now, I have plenty of female peers and colleagues and customers who are here to help those in a time of terrible need. I'm not sure they need more help. I think they just need help. I think we are what we create, and I do believe that you are going to need your network to help you work, whether that's hearing the hard truth, whether it's to help you identify what gaps you have in that skill set, because there will be some skills which will transfer very nicely and there will be some gaps. And we have to accept that if we're changing industry, we may need to do some learning. Let's identify those now. That's the help you'll need.
Yeah.
Identifying what are the gaps. And I would be encouraging people who are finding themselves in a situation to work with their own talent and culture teams. And I would be asking, as part of that exit, especially because we're in such a precarious situation where it's not like being made redundant in just a year when someone's decided to change a structure. It's in a global pandemic. So I would be asking for some career counselling and some advice in going through this exercise, because there are some amazing outplacement consultants, and I think a good employer will do this for you. And I think if people don't have that available to them, then that's when, yes, reach out, you know, let us help you. Because it's a tough process, because sometimes you don't see what other people see about you.
Yeah. How would you approach it? I think if someone is going through emotional day, you know, from one moment they are fine, the next moment when they read something or hear something,
The roller coaster. Be kind to yourself.
How do you approach that person, knowing that that person would definitely need help and need to focus?
I think you know, when we talk about the roller coaster ride, I think the days that are low are not the days to be giving the feedback that you know that's not necessarily what they want to hear. I think timing is everything. So you know, if it was a personal friend of mine, I think I can choose those moments a little bit better. But if someone was even reaching out to me and was in the state where I didn't feel like they were open to hearing, then I would perhaps, you know, use that day just to be a bit kinder and encourage them to perhaps start with all the things they're really good at, you know, and to break the task down to things they love doing, and tell me about all the good things that you've done and how have you been recognised. Build the person up.
Great
you know,
advice.
and I think that we're so good at building, like at not helping people recognise what they're great at, or I think we're also a little abashed. We're a little bit, we don't like to say too much about what we're good at or how we've been recognised. And I think for a lot of people in our industry, there's always been compliments and praises and awards won, and we've contributed towards those awards being won. So it's time to, someone's low is to focus the energy on reflecting on things that are good and where they excel at, and then take the conversation forward. But, you know, a person has to want to help themselves as well. So the person has to be ready, like in any type of going through the different stages. But I encourage people to know who do they feel safe around. Because of course someone who's having a bad day doesn't want to pick up the phone and speak to you or me, they want to speak to a friend. And identifying those that are going to be there for you. Because, you know, there are going to be days you just don't feel great.
Totally.
And that's okay, but who are those people? They're in your immediate like friendship circle, and then who's in your external circle that's maybe going to help you identify from an industry perspective what they think you were good at, and then you need to broaden that network and find out who's going to help challenge you on those and help you maybe put it in relatable terms for other industries.
Once they have identified their transferable skill sets and then they successfully moved into a different industry, what about the adjustment gap? You know, what advice would you have on that?
Be patient, be incredibly open-minded, right? It's like, you remember your first day in any job or even coming into the industry. I mean, it's overwhelming, really. Full of jargons, but you know that. So try and, like, you already know it's full of jargons because you know what it's like when you've brought someone into our industry. We have some great examples of that at Accor where I work, where we brought people in from aviation or from other industries altogether who were like, for the first year, how do you operate? Everything's in a jargon. So we actually used to start every conference with a jargon list and give it to every delegate because we knew so much it would be used for the presentations. So if you know all that, write down the things that you would find challenging about bringing someone in, and then ask yourself those questions while you're settling into a new organisation.
Yeah.
Be prepared to feel out of your depth. Be prepared to possibly, if you're changing industries, accept that you're going sideways, and if not, you're going back a step. But if that's in an area that you love and it's a whole new learning environment, then I'd say that's not a bad outcome.
Yeah.
And you take the first 12 months, the first 18th month as a massive reinvention, relearning journey.
Going back to university.
Oh yes, great.
Kind of mindset.
That's right.
Yeah.
And I have plenty of friends who studied late in life and changed careers. I think it will be possibly harder for people that are older to get their heads around this than perhaps people who've already grown up understanding they might have 4 or 5 careers in a lifetime, my apologies. So, but yeah, you're gonna have to be really open and committed to the journey.